and this one is all about the human side of cybercrime. We've got some really interesting stuff to cover today. Excerpts from a book about, how cyber attackers think, some current news articles, even some research papers.
It's always fascinating to me. We get
Yeah.
so caught up in the technology, we forget about the people involved,
Mhm.
the attackers, the victims, the whole human element.
Absolutely. And to kick things off, I think it'd be good to kind of look at, how cybercrime has actually evolved over time.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't new, right? It's been around for
Oh,
decades.
it's definitely not new. I mean, the first documented case goes way back, like, to the 1800s.
Oh, really?
But for today, I think let's stick with the kind of the late 20th century when
Yeah.
we started seeing mainframes and PCs popping up everywhere.
So that's when things really started to ramp up.
Oh, for sure. And then, of course, the internet came along.
Yeah.
Total game changer. Remember the Melissa virus?
Yeah,
That was
vaguely.
1999.
Okay.
Just a simple email attachment caused like $80 million in damage.
Wow. What made that so successful? Was it just because people were new to email and, viruses and things?
It was definitely part of it.
Okay.
I mean, nobody was really, thinking about the dangers back then. Plus, it looked like a normal document.
Oh, right. So people were just clicking on it without thinking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Curiosity, trust, all that playing right into the attacker's hands. And once someone opened it, boom, it would just self-replicate and spread like wildfire through their contacts.
So simple, but so effective.
It's crazy how something so small can have such a massive impact. And honestly, that same vulnerability exists today.
Good point. So what happened next after the Melissa virus? How did things progress?
Well, as technology got more sophisticated, so did the bad guys. Around the mid-2000s, we saw this rise of botnets, like Zbot.
Botnets, what are those?
Imagine a network of infected computers,
Okay.
all controlled remotely by a hacker. They could use these botnets to amplify their attacks, like, those DDoS attacks.
Yeah. DDoS, right? That's where they flood a website with traffic and shut it down.
Yeah, exactly. Or they could use them for spamming or stealing huge amounts of data.
So they were weaponizing the power of the internet.
Pretty much. And then social media exploded.
Yeah.
Another game changer. I mean, it's great for connecting and all, but it also became this gold mine for attackers.
Right, because people share so much personal information online, you don't even think about it sometimes.
Exactly. It's all about understanding those vulnerabilities. And of course, we can't forget about the Internet of Things. All those smart devices.
Oh, yeah, like smart refrigerators and security cameras. Everything's connected these days.
It creates a massive attack surface. Billions of potential entry points.
It's like every new technology comes with new risks.
It's true. And that's why understanding how these attackers think is so crucial. In fact, the book we're looking at today, it's got some really insightful stuff from a guy named Tony Sales. He's a reformed fraudster.
Okay.
And he basically says, to really get into the attacker's head, you got to think like one.
It takes one to know one, huh?
That's his philosophy. And he makes some interesting points about the tactics they use. He says they love to exploit our routines and predictability. Like even something as simple as office chat.
Office chat.
Yeah, when people are just talking about work, projects, weekend plans, whatever. He says that's a gold mine.
Oh, wow, you don't really think about it like that. We're just giving away information all the time.
Without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Another thing he talks about is the disconnect from consequences. A lot of these cyber criminals, they just don't see their actions as having real-world impact.
Really? Because it's online, maybe?
Yeah, I think there's a sense of detachment. And that, combined with a lack of empathy, makes it easier for them to justify what they do.
That's kind of scary to think about.
It is. It's not just about data theft. It's about manipulation, causing real harm. Sales points out how they often tap into our basic desires, greed, envy, the need for validation.
So like those Nigerian prince emails.
Exactly.
They seem so obvious, but people must fall for them.
Oh, they do. They prey on that desire for easy money.
And the willingness to believe it could actually be true.
Right. And they often target vulnerable populations, people who are desperate for financial help.
It's sad, really. It shows how we all have these vulnerabilities that can be exploited.
Absolutely. And the anonymity of the internet makes it even worse.
Yeah, it's easier to do bad things when you're hiding behind a screen.
For sure.
Yeah.
So how do they use these psychological tactics in real life? I'm guessing phishing is still a big one.
Oh, definitely.
Phishing is huge. And again, it all comes down to understanding human behavior. The source material makes this really interesting analogy, comparing phishing to actual phishing.
Oh, that's interesting. How so?
Well, you need the right bait, right?
Yeah.
You have to target the right fish. and reel them in.
So what's the bait in phishing?
Could be anything. A fake email promising a refund,
Oh, yeah.
a link to some amazing deal,
Mm.
or even a message that looks like it's from your boss asking for something urgent.
It's all about tricking people into letting their guard down.
Exactly. And they're getting more and more sophisticated. They'll use spear phishing, where they target specific people or organizations,
Okay.
or whaling, where they go after the big fish, CEOs, celebrities.
So even if you're tech savvy, you can still get tricked.
Oh, absolutely. No one is immune.
What about those business email compromise scams? I've heard about those too.
VEC, yeah, that's a big one. Imagine you get an email that looks like it's from your CEO asking you to transfer funds.
Oh, wow.
That's BEC. They impersonate authority figures.
And they use spoofed phone numbers now too, right?
Oh, all the time. It's getting harder and harder to tell what's real.
It's pretty disturbing how they prey on our good nature, our willingness to help.
I know. It's like they have a trick for every situation.
So it's not just about having the best antivirus software. You have to understand the human element.
You got it. Be aware of your own vulnerabilities.
So where do we go from here? I mean, we've talked about the individual level, but this goes way beyond that, right?
Oh, yeah. Next, we need to look at the big picture. Organized cybercrime, nation-state actors. That's where things get really serious.
So we've been talking about how cybercrime affects individuals, but it's a global issue, right? I mean, the consequences can be huge.
Oh, absolutely. When you start talking about organized cybercrime, these disinformation campaigns and nation-state actors, yeah, the stakes are much higher.
Let's talk about those disinformation campaigns first. How do they actually work? I mean, how do they use these to, like, manipulate public opinion on a large scale?
Well, it all comes down to social media and online platforms, right?
Uh-huh.
They spread these fake stories disguised as legitimate news.
So it's not just about stealing money anymore. It's more insidious than that.
Right. It could be about sowing discord, maybe trying to influence an election.
Or just damaging someone's reputation.
Exactly. The methods might change, but the goal is the same: manipulating people.
It's like a virus of the mind, spreading misinformation, eroding trust.
That's a great way to put it. And it works because people tend to believe what they see online, especially if it comes from a source they trust, or if it just, confirms their existing beliefs.
Well, how do we protect ourselves? How do you even know what to believe anymore?
It's tough. Critical thinking is key. Be skeptical, especially with sources you don't recognize. And always verify before you share anything.
So don't just automatically share that crazy headline.
Right. Watch out for stuff that's, really sensationalized or emotionally charged. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
It's like they're playing on our emotions.
Oh, absolutely. Fear, anger, outrage, that's what gets people clicking and sharing. Take a breath, step back, and think before you react.
Okay, let's move on to organized cybercrime. What makes these groups so dangerous?
Well, they've basically turned cybercrime into a business. They're organized, professional, they have specialists, and they're all about profit.
It's like a dark version of Silicon Valley.
Kind of, yeah. And they offer all these services: ransomware, exploit kits, all kinds of stuff. It's made it so much easier for people with limited technical skills to get involved.
So you don't even have to be a hacker anymore.
Not really, no. It's like plug and play.
Yeah.
And that makes it harder for law enforcement, too.
The research mentioned the dark web marketplace. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. It's basically this hidden part of the internet
Okay.
where they buy and sell illegal stuff. Stolen data, malware, you name it. They say you can even hire a hitman on there.
Is it easy to access? Can anyone just get on the dark web?
It's not as easy as, using Google.
Yeah.
But it's definitely more accessible than it used to be. And all that anonymity, the encryption, it makes it a perfect place for criminals.
So I'm guessing that makes it pretty tough for law enforcement.
Oh, yeah. It's constantly evolving. Hard to infiltrate, hard to track anyone down.
And then you add in these nation-state actors. It just gets more complicated.
Exactly. Governments all over the world are using cyber attacks to achieve their goals.
What kind of goals are we talking about?
Could be anything. Spying, stealing secrets,
Okay.
sabotaging infrastructure like power grids or financial systems,
Wow.
even messing with elections.
The research talked about this idea of strategic culture when it comes to these nation-state actors. What does that mean?
It basically means that a country's history, values, and goals all influence how they behave online.
So some countries might be more aggressive than others?
Exactly. Think about Russia, for example. The NotPetya attack in 2017. That showed how far they're willing to go.
And it wasn't even meant to target everyone, right?
It was supposed to hit Ukraine, but it ended up causing billions of dollars in damage worldwide.
It's like a reminder that we're all connected in this digital age.
And it shows how hard it is to attribute attacks,
Yeah.
to actually prove who did it.
Are there other examples of nation-state cyber attacks?
Oh, yeah, tons. North Korea's a big one. They use cybercrime to make money and get around sanctions.
So they're basically funding their government with cybercrime.
Pretty much. They've stolen millions from banks and cryptocurrency exchanges.
It's amazing. The lines are really blurred now between like traditional crime and what these governments are doing.
It's a whole new world.
So we've got organized crime, disinformation, nation-state actors. It's pretty overwhelming.
That's a lot. And we can't forget about another big threat, insiders.
Right. The people within organizations who pose a risk.
They can be just as dangerous, if not more so.
Yeah.
And their motivations, well, they can vary a lot.
Like what?
Could be an employee who's angry, wants revenge,
Okay.
or someone looking to make a quick buck by selling data,
Right.
or even someone who's been tricked or forced into doing something.
Yeah, the research mentioned that case with Jack Teixeira, the Air National Guardsman who leaked all those documents.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of the damage an insider can cause. And it's tough to prevent.
How do you even stop someone who already has access?
It's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
You have to balance security with privacy and trust.
Hmm.
You want people to feel comfortable reporting anything suspicious.
But you also need to protect your data.
Right. It's finding that sweet spot where security and trust can coexist. Because in the end, humans are both our biggest asset and our biggest vulnerability.
So where do we go from here? We've talked about all these threats. What can we actually do about it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk solutions. How do we build a more human-centric approach to cybersecurity?
So we've spent a lot of time in the weeds looking at the threats, the motivations, the players. But now it's time to talk solutions. What can we actually do to build a more secure, resilient digital world?
Well, I think it starts with changing how we think about cybersecurity. We can't just focus on the technology.
Right.
We have to recognize that people, they're both the weakest link and the strongest asset.
So it's not just about firewalls and antivirus anymore.
It's part of it, for sure. Those technical safeguards, they're important, but they're not enough. We need to give people the knowledge and the skills to make good decisions online.
The research talked a lot about security awareness training, but they also said it needs to be better, more engaging.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh,
But traditional training, it just doesn't cut it. It's too generic, too technical. People tune out.
Yeah, I get it. It's like those boring compliance videos they make you watch at work.
Exactly. We need to make it relevant to their lives. Use real-world examples. Remember those psychological principles we talked about? Let's use those.
So instead of just saying, don't click on suspicious links,
Right.
we explain why it's dangerous and how to actually spot those phishing attacks.
Exactly. Let's say you get an email that looks like it's from your bank, asking you to verify your account.
Oh, yeah, I get those all the time.
Instead of just clicking the link, what do? Check the email address, hover over that link, see where it really goes, look for typos, anything that seems off.
Good tips. So it's about making people more critical, more aware of what they're doing online.
Exactly. And it's not just about phishing emails. It's about all those social engineering tactics, understanding how disinformation spreads, having good password practices.
So there's a lot of personal responsibility involved.
There is. But organizations, they have a big role to play too, creating a culture of security.
What does that actually mean? Like, what does that look like?
Well, it means open communication. People need to feel comfortable reporting anything suspicious. No fear of being blamed.
Right.
Clear guidelines, strong policies, and making sure everyone understands, how they fit into the security picture.
And it starts at the top, right? If the leadership doesn't care, no one else will.
Exactly. Leadership has to be on board. They need to be the champions for security, setting the example, showing that it matters.
But it's not just about awareness, right? We still need those technical safeguards.
Oh, absolutely. Multi-factor authentication, that's a must-have these days. It adds an extra layer of security.
Right.
Even if someone steals your password, they can't get in.
Can you give me an example? How does it actually work?
Think of it like going to the ATM.
Okay.
You need your card and your PIN to get your money.
Right.
It's the same idea. It could be a code sent to your phone, a fingerprint scan, facial recognition.
So it's like having two locks on your door.
Exactly. And strong passwords, that's still huge. Don't use the same password for everything.
I know, but it's hard to remember all of them.
I get it. That's why password managers are so helpful. They store everything securely. You only need to remember one master password.
That makes sense. What else should organizations be doing on the technical side?
Keep your software updated. Those patches, they fix vulnerabilities. It's like locking your doors and windows.
And what about data protection? That seems like a big one these days.
Huge.
Yeah.
Classify your data, figure out what's most sensitive, limit access, only those who need it should have it, and encrypt everything. Think of it like putting your valuables in a safe.
We also need to be prepared for when things go wrong, right? Because they probably will at some point.
Absolutely. Incident response planning. You need a clear process for dealing with attacks. Who does what, how you communicate, how you recover your data.
So it's not just about preventing attacks, it's about knowing how to react when they happen.
Right, it's like a fire drill. You hope you never need it, but if you do, you're ready.
And finally, we need to stay ahead of the curve. Because the bad guys, they're always coming up with new tricks.
That's where threat intelligence comes in. Monitoring those new threats, vulnerabilities, tactics, you gotta be proactive.
Like a chess game. Always thinking a few moves ahead.
Exactly. It's an arms race, no doubt. But by combining human intelligence with technology, we can build a much safer digital world.
Well, there you have it. Our deep dive into the human element of cybersecurity.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
I hope you all learned something today. And remember, cybersecurity, it's everyone's responsibility. By understanding the psychology behind these attacks, recognizing our own weaknesses, taking those proactive steps, well, we can make the digital world a safer place for everyone.
Thanks for joining us. Stay safe out there.
And stay vigilant. Until next time.